In this video, I will demonstrate different types of slip stitches. Slip a stitch. It means to slip a stitch from left needle to right needle. It sounds pretty simple, isn't it? But surprisingly, it can get a little confusing. So let me go over different types of slip stitches. Before we start, in the comment below, please share the struggle you have faced with slip stitches. I know I am not alone who found it confusing. Slip as if to purl or slip purlwise. Let's start with a very basic slip stitch. Slip as if to purl or slip purlwise. The purpose of this is to transfer a stitch from one needle to another without changing the stitch definition. For example, I have a basic knit stitch right here. When you're looking at the stitch with this loop, this is a right leg of the stitch and this is a left leg of the stitch. So the normal stitch usually have right leg of the stitch in front of the needle and left leg of the stitch is behind the needle. When we are slipping a stitch and don't want to twist the stitch, we are going to insert the needle from right to left as if to purl, and then instead of working on the stitch, simply transfer the stitch to the right needle. This is a slip stitch, purlwise. In this way, the stitch will stay on the needle in the same way. Right leg is front and left leg is in the back. When it says slip purlwise, it can create a little confusion because we feel like we have to bring the working yarn forward just like when we purl the stitch. I would like to note that the working yarn remains where it is unless specified on the pattern. We will talk about this later on in this video. Slip as if to knit or slip knitwise. When the pattern states to slip knitwise, instead of inserting the needle from right to left, we are going to insert the needle from left to right as if to knit, and then slip the stitch. By slipping a stitch knitwise, we are twisting the stitch. So, as you can see, the right leg is now behind the needle and the left leg is placed in front. This method is used when the designer would like to create different textures on the fabric by twisting stitches. This swatch is a great example. Right side of this fabric, I slipped stitch purlwise. So as you can see, these stitches are having regular V shape. The left side of this fabric, I did slip knitwise. So as you can see, the stitches are twisted. It almost looks like crisscrossed. So that's a great example of how stitch definition changes when you slip the stitch purlwise or knitwise. This slipped stitch is also used as a part of decreasing stitches like SKP, slip, knit, pass. If you would like to learn about the stitch, you can click the pop-up right here on the screen. If you like this tutorial so far, please hit like. If you'd like to be notified of new tutorials and knitting podcast, don't forget to hit subscribe. I work really hard to create free content like this. If you feel like supporting what I do, please get me a cup of coffee through a Ko-fi account. The link is listed in the descriptions below. Your support will be used toward necessary subscriptions or equipment to continue making free tutorials and knitting patterns. Thank you for your support. Slip with yarn in front. As I mentioned before, if the yarn position needs to be changed, it will be specified on the pattern. For example, if we are knitting a knit stitch, the working yarn will be placed in the back. When it states to slip a stitch purlwise without any specification, we are going to leave the working yarn as it is, and then slip the stitch purlwise, just like this. But when there is an instruction as wyif with yarn in front, we are going to bring the working yarn in front of the work. On the other words, bring the yarn forward, then slip the stitch. And move on to the next stitch, which in this case I am knitting, so the working yarn is placed in the back again, and then I'm going to knit this stitch. Because the working yarn is placed in front, you can see this horizontal bar in front of the stitch. Slip with yarn in back. The same thing applies to yarn in the back. If you are knitting a purl stitch, the working yarn will be placed in front of your work. If the pattern specifies wyib with yarn in back, we are going to bring the working yarn in the back and then slip the stitch and move on to the next stitch. No specification on the pattern. If you don't see any specifications like purlwise or knitwise, it usually means to slip the stitch purlwise, so you won't twist the stitch, unless it is a part of decreasing stitches like SKP. Decreasing stitches has its own techniques and directions, so I advise you to do separate research. If you don't see direction for where to place a working yarn, then it usually means to keep where the working yarn is currently placed and slip the stitch. If you feel like the direction of the pattern is not clear, you can also contact the designer. I'm sure they are happy to hear your feedback. I hope this video helped you understand the basics of slip stitches. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comment below. Happy knitting!